It's Windows. What can I say? You can say everything about the Apple. It's time for disparaging remarks about Windows. Okay. So, like I was saying, first time we've been together here, I wanted to just take an aside here and talk for a minute about what Shawnee had to say, because it's so, I believe, so important and so crucial. And one of the things I didn't put in here today, as I unrolled the sermon, was the exact characteristic that she talked about God being a God of justice and being one who looks after the oppressed. And as the church, we must emulate God. And so we must really care about the oppressed, care about seeing justice. We have to do what we can as a church to forward that amongst ourselves and really as much as we can do here in our own area, in Brevard County. That is very important for us. We cannot gloss over, in the Bible, there are literally hundreds of scriptures about justice and about God caring about the oppressed. And for us to even try to compartmentalize that in our life, we can't do that. As Christians, we've done that for many years. I've done that for many years. And learning now what I've learned about Juneteenth and learning about the things like, for instance, Oklahoma City. I don't know if you've followed the news. You know, if you've been at all on the news, that whole thing to me is just an outrage. When I heard that, I said, no, that can't be true in our country. It is absolutely true. And in fact, most Americans never knew that happened until just recently. So I thought about that, and I thought about the United States. How will God bless the United States? He will bless the United States when we are a country who cares about the oppressed and people like that need to be lifted up. They need to be equalized. Whatever the term was that, Shawnee put it so well, better than I could put it. But that's so important for us as a church and so important for us as Christians. That's just an aspect of who we are. It's not all of who we are, but in a way, it is all of who we are. We're all about emulating God in His heart. So I really appreciate what Shawnee had to say about it. It's got to be something that's in our hearts, not just today, but every day of this year. I hope we really kind of get that down inside of us. Okay, happy Father's Day to all the fathers amongst us. And if you're a dad, I hope you will have some time today to relax. I hope you'll have that. I hope you'll have some time to reflect on your life and all the blessings that God has given you. I think it's easy for us to kind of forget what God has given us as far as blessings. And so for the next hour or so, I'm going to be talking on this kidding. I had to say that. I promise, it won't be that long unless I get off on the sidetrack, which is very possible. But I thought to get started, what I wanted to do to get started was give you a little bit of humor here. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. And here it is. It's what dads never seem to ever say. So I'm going to use that one.
I don't care how late you stay out. Stay out as late as you want. You want to borrow a new car? You want to borrow my credit card? Kids today, they really have it rough. I have no idea where we are or where we're going. I mean, when I was their age, life was easy. Super easy. Why haven't you gotten a tattoo yet? How come you don't have any piercings yet? Yep, we're lost. We're completely lost. Ooh, sports. Just do whatever the mechanic says to do. Vehicle maintenance is completely overrated. Look, whatever the mechanic is asking, just pay him. Pay him whatever he wants. I wish they had soap operas at night. I like that boy. You should date him. You should date him immediately. But what about the creepy guy with the motorcycle? He's cute. Yeah, sure. Spring break in Tahiti sounds fun. Hey, make sure you get all your video games done before you start your homework. You don't have to pass all your classes. What? You have a project due tomorrow, and you've known about it for 4 weeks, and you haven't started yet? Sweet! Doesn't anybody want to know if we're there yet? Remember, if you need anything between midnight and 4 a.m., please come wake me up. Hey, I'm on the phone. Could you bring the baby over and let him climb all over me? Hey, can you please turn that music up? Well, we just stopped for lunch 10 minutes ago, but yeah, let's stop again. I never have trouble with my toddler. I never have trouble with my teenagers. I never have trouble with my adult children. You know, she's right. We are ruining her life. Yes, more homework to correct. All right, whining. Yay, tantrums. Vomit. We just really need to spoil these kids more. Sorry, buddy. I don't know any good jokes at all. You're 16. You pretty much know everything now. I think 18's a great age to get married. Okay, remember, make sure you turn on all the lights before you leave the house. Hey, could you leave the front door open for a couple hours? Thanks. Whoa! Money really does grow on trees.
Okay. Well, hopefully you appreciated that. Now I got a more serious video, I think, about fathers that reflects on dads. And I want to say this too, that not everybody has had a great experience with dads. And I realize that in this audience, there are those who they think of dads and sometimes it brings very different emotions. And I understand that. And I apologize if it evokes some unpleasant memories with you. But if that's your case, think about someone you can adopt as a dad, you know? Think about that. Maybe someone needs you to adopt them as a dad. There's a young lady named Stephanie who was over in Orlando who adopted me as her dad many years ago because she just needed a dad that was close to her. And for the last 20 years, she sent me a card every Father's Day and every birthday that I had. She always remembers, Stephanie Jones. I don't know if any of you know her or not, Stephanie Rose Jones. But maybe you can adopt somebody that's a dad, unofficially, you know. So here's the second video.
Ever notice in the moment your balloon came back? Or why you like to work with your hands? Or why your friends always came and played at your house? Ever wonder how vacations are made? Why the night monsters never came back? Or why you and the princess always had the same name? Ever appreciate how happy your dad could be when you walked into the house? How goofiness can ease the tension. Or the non-stop battle he fights between supporting his family and supporting his family. Because this Father's Day, if you really look around, you just might. You might appreciate where some of your passions came from. Might wonder on the dreams of those before. And you might notice that being the bad guy is sometimes a very hard job. You may even discover the ultimate pride in his eyes when you've learned for yourself.
So, thinking about fathers, I thought about several dads in my immediate family. And some of them are dads of my grandchildren, some of them are my children. This one is a picture my daughter did a few years ago of my son-in-law, Tim, walking Titus to school. You might recognize that street if you're from New York. You might know that's the Astoria Boulevard there, and they're walking to his class. I think it's funny that he has that backpack on his head as big as him. And I saw this, I thought about Greg Coley because yes, Greg, Tim could hang out with you in the gym. He totally looks like that. He actually played Batman at one of the theme parks, so he kind of was a superhero. And then I thought about my other son-in-law, Matthew. This is Matthew hanging out with the kids. Very recent picture of him. And then the newest dad in the family is my son Tommy, our son Tommy. And there he is with Noah, and he's working on being a great dad, you know. And then I thought about my father-in-law, Bill Rodak, who passed away last year. He was my first model of a Christian dad. The first guy, and he was up to the task. I mean, he was the same, and here's the thing about being a dad. He was the same in private as he was in public. You know, if you can just get that down, that means a lot, you know? He was a great dad. He was with his wife for many, many years. That was his only wife, but he was definitely a consistent man, and someone I learned a lot from. This is my dad. Last but not least, my dad taught me a lot of things. He was, he was a glass blower. That's a kind of a profession that you don't see much anymore, but that's what he did. He got up every morning, he went to the glass factory, he worked, he was a craftsman. He made glassware all day long, every day. He started working on it. This is a picture of him climbing up on it's called the dummy, what they actually call those wooden things. Climbed up on there, sat down, and started making glassware, pulling molten glass out of the furnace, drawing the stem on it. I mean, I can close my eyes to this day and see him working. Sorry. Didn't go this way when I was practicing. And then that's him with me when I was about probably 4 years old. I think that was about 1956 or 57, something like that. There we are. But he taught me many lessons. You know, the thing about dads are, with all their shortcomings, they teach you lessons. My dad taught me to basically do everything, to build everything to last 1,000 years. That was kind of his thing. When he built something, he built it thoroughly. It wasn't fancy, but it was his best work that he put into it. And so I learned a lot from that. He basically just, he said, if you're not going to build it right, don't build it at all. That was kind of what he put into me. Aim for perfection. So when you think about your dad today, regardless of what names your kids call you, or what names your grandchildren call your kids, my kids, there's one thing that the 5 dads in those pictures I just showed you have in common. Can you guess what that is? 5 things they all have in common. Here's what it is. They're not perfect. None of them are perfect. All of you in here that are dads, you know that about yourself. You're not perfect. And that's a really important thing to know, and we're going to talk about that some more. But what I want to talk about today is the perfect father. The perfect father, who is God our Father. He is the one that he's the model. He's the standard for what a father should be. In fact, in our lives, the best way that we can strive for the right goals as a father is to seek to know as much as possible about our perfect Father and his perfect Son, who, although Jesus was not physically a father on this earth, yet he was the exact representation of God according to the Scriptures, right? Hebrews 1:3 says the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. So today I want to look at just a couple of characteristics that God, our perfect Father, has. Okay? It's certainly not all of them, it's a few of them. We talked about one. We talked about seeking justice. That's one of them you can remember. But our Father is perfect in love. This is important. A lot of dads, when they get older, they start hearing voices. And I'm not talking about going crazy, those kind of things. That may be there too. That may be in my future. I don't know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about voices of the past. Voices of the past. Negative voices. Voices that say you failed. You know, I so appreciate what Bobby had to say earlier. Bobby Doringa did a great communion for us because, you know, Bobby says, hey, I did a lot of failing, but I never gave up the fight. I mean, when it came time and he saw where he was, he picked up the standard. He picked it up and he went with it, and he's going with it to this day. Amen. And the original title I had for today's sermon was, you know, the man who showed up. That was always going to be about fathers. But that's a lot of being a father, is you spend your life, you continue to show up. You know, that's part of it. That's like the first thing. But the voices that say you failed, that's a lie from Satan. You may be feeling that today. You may be looking back, and you're looking at your kids, and you're saying, man, I failed. No, you haven't. That is a lie from Satan. It's not over till it's over. It's not over till the end. And the way you set your kids up, even after you're gone, even the future generations, is you keep doing what you're doing right now. You keep going with it. You don't stop. It's a lie. It's a lie from Satan. The most important thing about us as an earthly father is to keep showing up. And here's a trait you can borrow from our perfect Father. He never gives up on us, but he keeps coming. We're going to look over Luke 15, 11 through 32. You know, it's kind of ironic. It's the story of the prodigal son. That's Jesus' parable about the prodigal son. It's ironic that it's called that because it's really more about the father than it is the son. What you can learn from that is you read it again and read it through the lens of what does this tell me as a father. So let's go look at that. You'll have to follow along in your Bibles. This is a long verse. So it says, Jesus continued, again, verse 11 through 32. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. And not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and he there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he had spent everything, there was severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out as a citizen of that country, to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. That's got to be the lowest form, feeding pigs. Pigs smell. You ever go by a pig pen? Like, we've been by on the highway, and the pigs are off in the distance. You can smell them. There's a stench, you know. They may be intelligent animals. I read all this stuff about how pigs are intelligent animals, but they stink. Man, there's a smell. So he goes off to feed the pigs, and he says he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion for him, and he ran to his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and now he's alive again, and he was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. And meanwhile, the older son was in the field, and when he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. And he called one of the servants to ask him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. And the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years, I've been a goody two-shoes, slaving for you, and never disobeying your orders. And yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, he comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. That is the characteristic of God. I don't care where you are today or how far you think you're from God right now. God never gives up on you. Don't ever believe the lie that God has given up. He never gives up. He never gives up. I don't care what you've done. He never gives up on you. Otherwise, why would Jesus tell this parable? This is the exact message he wanted to get back about the Father, is in our lives, we can screw ourselves up so bad and get so far from God, and yet God says, I'm always looking for you. And in fact, you're more important to me than the ones I have right over here. They're important too. That never left me. But I'm coming after you because you're the one. You know, the 99, he leaves the 99, goes for the one. You see so many verses in the Bible about that. That's what it's all about. It's about God. It's about his love for us, his unconditional love. 1 John 3, verse 19 says, this is how we know that we belong to the truth and how we set our hearts at rest in his presence. If our hearts condemn us, we know that God is greater than our hearts and he knows everything. I put this in here for a reason. What does this mean? See, this verse can be one that we misuse. It gets misused a lot. It doesn't mean that whatever we do, if we're not walking in the light, somehow we're going to get a free pass. No, the condition of the verse is that we belong to the truth. That's where we start from. And we're walking in the light. And we're doing our best. And we're confessing our sins. And we're continuing to get up and fight the good fight. But some of us in this room, myself being one of those, are accused. You know, there's basically two types of people, right? There's the accused and the deceived. You know, if you're deceived, you have no idea that anything's wrong. But a lot of us are in the accused half of the room, where everything about us, we think there's no way that God could love me. There's no way that God could bridge the gulf to me and all the things I've done. But God is perfect in love. We saw that in the portrayal of the Father and the story that Jesus told. So that's my point. He never gives up on us. If you're one of those accused people, remember that God is greater than your hearts. He figures all this out, even though you may sit and think, I don't understand how he could possibly love me. Yes, he loves you. God is perfect in design. God has planned out every part of your life in advance. I kind of like this as an engineer. I've got control issues anyway. You know, I love everything to be controlled. I love everything to be a certain way. And God is the greatest engineer of all time. You know, there's something for everybody with God. He is the ultimate engineer, and he has built an incredible universe. I think about how systems that we design become obsolete. I started thinking about, you know, when I moved to Florida in 1983, I came here to be on a team of people that built a banking system. And it was a system that basically took care of banks. That system ran in 500 banks. It sold for millions of dollars. It made hundreds of millions of dollars for the company over the years. That was in 1983. This year, 2021, they are beginning to shut it down. They're deconverting off of it. All the code that I wrote, all the design that I did, it's all being deconverted. And, you know, a new system that's got more stuff has come into being. See, the best thing we design, I mean, that's a pretty long run. That's like 30-some years, something like that. Most things are like 5 years, you know, or 1 year, and then they're obsolete. You know, I thought about my dad he would build these walls, you know, like West Virginia. If you don't know about West Virginia is always sliding. The mountains are always sliding into the valleys, right, Mark? You get that Appalachian mountain range, there's always mud coming off if you build a house on the side of the hill in West Virginia, things are going to slide, things are going to crack. That's just how it is. If you've not, like, got some unbelievable foundation, forget it. So my dad, you know, true to the way he was, he decided he wanted to build a wall. He dug a driveway into the hill, which you have to do. Everything in West Virginia, you got to dig into the hill. It's like there's a joke people say that if you're from West Virginia, one leg is shorter than the other because they used to walk. Anyway, so he dug this wall, and he put in this block wall, and he put in the block wall, and he left like a 3-foot space behind it, and he put all kinds of vent holes in the wall so the water could drain out, because West Virginia's full of springs and mountains. The water could drain out, but then he said, I really want this thing to last. So he, for months, I remember for months, every glass bottle we had, any kind of glass container, we'd put it behind the wall. Like he wanted this crush barrier behind the wall so that as the hill slid, you know, the glasses would break, but the wall would stay there. You know, I'm happy to report that even to this day, that wall is still there. We drove by it a couple of years ago, it's still there, even though, you know, I'm sure the mountains slid, everything slid, the wall's still there. But eventually, it will come down. You know, everything becomes obsolete. But yet, God has built this unbelievable system that holds together. You know, he lays out the Milky Way galaxy, he lays out a million other galaxies like it, and then if that's not enough, he gives us this book that has this manual that has 66 books in it. It has 1,189 chapters. It has 31,173 verses. I haven't counted them. That's what I'm reading. And it has 757,459 words in the Bible, all to pass on his heart to us and give us a foundation for living out our lives. See, God is the ultimate engineer. He has put together everything and holds it in stasis in a perfect way. Don't you think isn't that amazing? Wow. I just get amazed. It's Father's Day. We should do a lot of thinking about God and how unbelievable he is, right? He's an amazing God. Romans chapter 1, verse 20 says, For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. The evidence of the greatest Father of all is all around us. His invisible qualities are seen in what he has made. He's the greatest Father of all. He's first and foremost a creator. He has unlimited breadth and depth and unlimited power. And he's able to rescue the likes of us from anywhere we might happen to be, no matter how far we are from God. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 says, Even before he made the world, God loved us and chose us in Christ to be holy and without fault in his eyes. God decided to in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. Now, if you went to all of this work to do this, do you think he would give up on you that easily? If you're concerned about that, no, he's not going to give up on you. He's never going to give up on you. He did it deliberately, and he made an advanced decision. God is perfect in grace. God knows when to extend us grace, even when we don't deserve it. This is kind of a hard concept for me, being that kind of a person where I'm just, you know, I always joke with people about never put a German in charge because they'll just give you commands. Well, I'm German, you know, so that's kind of me. You know, I'm more about commands and absolutes, but not so much about grace. So this is the thing I have to learn about with God is grace. John chapter 1, verse 14. It says, The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Since Jesus is the exact representation of the Father, and Jesus is full of grace and truth, then therefore God is also full of grace and truth. And we tend to think of them separately. Either we as people, we want to administer judgment, or we want to extend grace. You know, some people say cheap grace. We go from one side to the other. But it's hard for us to think in terms of those two things together, right? And yet God perfectly has those in balance together. God knows when to apply grace, and God knows when there needs to be discipline. You know, he understands those things. But Jesus represented absolute truth and absolute grace at the same time. Therefore, God represents those same things. And lastly, God is perfect in discipline. God never disciplines because he is out of control toward us. Do we make God angry? Oh yeah, we make God angry. But he is the perfect Father. He doesn't lash out in anger. He'll discipline us in a way to bring us to change. You know, I heard somebody say one time that discipleship was like gentle pressure relentlessly applied. That's kind of God. When God sets his sights on you, he's going to discipline you. He's going to disciple you. You're not going to be able to wiggle out of it, you know. But it's going to be gentle, but it's going to be relentless. God will choose how he will apply discipline. And he knows us better than we know ourselves. That's the great thing about God. Sometimes growing up, think back with your parents. Do you remember them ever disciplining you out of anger? I can think of a few of those times. You know, I was a sassy kid. I was a smart mouth kid. I was a spoiled kid. I was a brat. And so I was always mouthing off, you know. And my mother used to have this saying, which I never understood. She says, if you keep mouthing off, I'm going to slap you down a rat hole. I don't know what that meant. It's like, a rat hole doesn't sound like a place I want to be. But I have no idea what that, I still to this day, I have no idea what that even means. I asked her one time, she says, I don't know, we always say that. Slap you down a rat hole. I'm going to slap you down a rat hole. Well, one time I was mouthing off on my mother. And I was mouthing off my mother. My dad slaps me across the mouth with the back of his hand. I remember that to this day. That was a traumatic experience. And he regretted it as soon as he did it. He did it out of anger. And I remember sometimes disciplining my kids out of anger, more because I was frustrated with them than because of any righteous motive, you know. God never does that. God never disciplines us God is never out of control when he disciplines us. He applies the discipline in just the right way that we need, because he's looking for helping us to the best place we can possibly be. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7. It says, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you're not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you're not legitimate, nor not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, here's our response. Strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. If you're under the discipline of God, the best thing you can do with it is bend to it. Listen to what God is trying to tell you, so that you will not be disabled, but you'll be healed. You know, when we sign up and we pay money and we go to some physical therapist to put things right that are wrong, you know, we're paying for pain to be, you know, not everything is pleasant. There's pain involved, you know. I always think about Curtis walking around with that ball when he had his shoulder work on. He had a lot of physical therapy, right, to deal with that. There's pain involved, but he's got his range of motion back. That's why that's there. Well, God is trying, there it is. So God is trying to get us to have full range of motion. So he's going to deal out pain to help us get there. He is the perfect Father. God is the perfect Father. I could have picked a lot of different characteristics about God and talk about, those are just a couple of them. So to sum up God and the characteristics we talked about today, I want to read through a psalm together that I think really describes God. It's Psalm 103. Psalm 103 talks about God in a way that covers most of the things we talked about today. So you'll have to follow along your Bible. I didn't put the verses up, they're pretty long, but let's go through it together. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed." There it is. "He made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. He will not always..." Lost my place here. 9. Thank you. "He will not always chide, nor will he keep his anger forever. He does not deal with us according to our sins." Good to know. "Nor repay us according to our iniquities. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his steadfast love toward those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far does he remove our transgressions from us." We don't remove them, by the way. He removes them. "As a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust." He knows how weak we are. So today, as you think about God, I hope you do on Father's Day, think about your perfect Father. And just spend some time with that. And I think really every day we need to think a lot more about God and about what kind of a Father he is to each one of us. Thanks.
Amen.